I'm just going to take a drink of water, and then let's get this shit on the roll thing.
Get our shit on.
Go.
Ian, get your shit on.
Let's get shit on.
That phrase is going to catch on. I know it.
Yeah.
Mythos Busters, shit on me.
I mean...
I was worried we wouldn't have a good cold open, but there it is. Never mind, that's a warm
steaming
open.
hot open.
Mythos Busters, investigating the mystery, monsters, and madness of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to episode 99 of Mythos Busters, a Arkham LCG podcast. I am not Sean, I am Scott. Sean is currently doing something that doesn't really matter. Nothing important is happening at all. He just can't be on the show tonight. But with me, Nick.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm well. If I remember right, I think Sean's parting message was, Mythos Busters, fuck that.
I think that's that was pretty much verbatim, I believe.
He said he was going to reapply to Cardboard of the Rings. Like they take applications.
Ian, I think you actually recorded the conversation with him telling us that he doesn't care about us anymore.
That's accurate. I'll submit it to TMZ soon.
Oh, God.
TMZ.
Well, better than TTF, so there we go.
As acronyms go, yes.
Yes. Anyways, guys, we have an awesome episode for you. We are recording this a little bit early because basically our schedules are in a cluster again. Mostly because of Sean, because he's just like, guys, I can't join you for 2 weeks. So, ignore me. So we're going to get around to our patron stuff, what we've been doing over the last week since we talked last. And then our main topic is going to be basically the holdover from last episode because we don't know how long we talk. It's not like we've had this happen like 6 times before. We are going to do a deep dive into the Innsmouth Conspiracy campaign box. So this is going to be super spoilery. We will let you know when we're going to start talking about the spoils. But just be prepared that if you are joining us for this conversation, make sure you've played enough of the first 2 scenarios of the Innsmouth campaign that you are okay hearing everything. And then we're also going to talk about War of the Outer Gods because we didn't really get a chance to debrief on that. So, moving on, first big thing we'd like to talk about, and we mentioned this in the last episode as well, we have a big update for Dissonant Voices. We have started Innsmouth. We are so close to literally being caught up to the packs that are out. And the big announcement we have is that we are now integrated into Arkham Cards. So in the Arkham Cards app, if you log in to your patron account, when you go to read the campaign story in the app, you can just hit play. And then all of a sudden, one of us is narrating the story for you. Ian, Nick, you guys have used this as of late? Hearing yourselves read the story to yourself?
Well, I purposely started a campaign in which I was not reading so that I could hear other people's voices instead of my own. But yeah, I started a Return to Path to Carcosa campaign a few nights ago. So I got to hear, who was it? Was it Sean? Yeah, I got to hear Sean's voice narrating the game for me as I set up. It's super cool. Love it.
Yeah, it's a really slick feature. I definitely have used it so far and super easy to use. Just hitting a play icon. Who knew?
Yeah, it's like, and as much as like we're tooting our own horn, I have found it awesome. Like as I'm setting up, I mean, before the show, we were talking about kind of the ritualistic nature of setting up to play this game and grabbing your tokens, getting the card shuffle and everything like that, and having the story just read to you is just so nice. So, any patron at any level gets access to that, even if it's just $1 an episode. So if you're interested, check that out. We also have the United Zealot campaign available for free on YouTube with little links you can click for the different parts of the story. Check it out, see if Distant Voices is something you are interested in. Also, our Orbits tokens that we debuted at FarcomCon, you can still check those out. Arbits.com, it's AURBITS.com, and just use the discount code MythosBustersDirect, all one word, and you can type that in. I believe it's 10% off. And lastly, that Sean is super happy about, we still have our Mythos Busters hotline open. Because we're recording this a little bit early, we're going to keep the question going to the next episode so people can still call in. You can call in at 203-493-MYTH. It's 203-493-MYTH, 6984. And the question of the week is, who is your pet investigator and why do you love them? So, if you go to our Facebook page as well, you can just click on the Call Us button, and that will dial in. So leave us a message. We may play it on the show, and then you'll become internet famous, and everyone will want your autograph, and you'll make millions. Isn't that right, Ian?
This is correct.
Ian, we have tons of new patrons. I have no idea why there's more people doing Patreon. So why don't you take us through that? No idea whatsoever.
Very strange. Must be an alignment of the planets, I think. A syzygy of some kind. Thanks to our board members, Chris B, Chris H, Chris M. That's our conglomeration of Chris's. Morton, Jared, Ian, Kyle, Philip, Dave, Abilio, Jesse, Chad, and Robert. Thanks so much for your huge support of the podcast. And special shout out to a random patron this time around is to Ben Clapperton. Thanks, Ben, for your support as well.
Thanks, Ben.
Couple of other Patreon items. So one, make sure as always you go check out mythosmerch.com, because not to toot our own horn too much, but I'm always impressed by our merch store and there's fun stuff, items on there. If you too have partaken in the Mythos merch, feel free to send us some pictures, and we encourage you to send us some pictures on social media, Discord, whatnot, because we love to see that swag in the wild, as they say. Patreon goals. So in terms of goals, nothing necessarily new from our last update other than just a reminder we unlocked a custom scenario, which give us some time to actually create the thing. Unfortunately, not possible to create those things overnight, but we will start working on that and getting that done. And make sure to go back and listen to episode 97, because that's where we actually did some brainstorm work on the scenario. And we also have unlocked another goal. We blew through a couple goals in January. And so the other goal we unlocked was BusterCon, which means we're actually, and I have to stop my panicked breathing for this, we're going to put on our own con at some point, BusterCon. That's going to happen. I can't quite believe it, but yeah. Obviously, because of something happening in the world. I think it's called COVID. I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
Just an international pandemic.
Yeah,
nothing big. But.
just a minor pandemic of some kind. Obviously, we'll have to wait until that's over and to actually put on a big physical convention, because we care about our fellow human beings. But once that's over, we will figure out the details and let you know when that's going to happen. But thanks everyone for helping us smash through those goals. Kind of unbelievable when we first started this podcast that we're here. But it's definitely thanks to our listeners. And finally, we have a few new job titles to give out. And we'll give out 4 job titles this time around. Why don't we just each take turns reading one of them, I think, just to break it up a little bit. So, Nick, do you want to read our first job title there?
Sure. The first job title that we have coming in is Benjamin Bickle, who is the Shoggoth massage therapist. They have been getting cranky, so I really appreciate that now we have finally someone to help relieve the Shoggoth stress that has been building up. Get in there. Don't be afraid to roll up them sleeves and get right in there, Benjamin.
Yeah, you use the elbows, especially. Mm-hmm. Really get deep in that muscle tissue.
Right. If you can find the muscle tissue, get deep into it.
Jessica Speed is going to be our Deep One Health Services Administrator. they need a lot of health services. They are disgusting and ill, and I mean, God bless her. She's doing the Lord's work. Those deep ones need our help, folks. I always want to have Sarah McLachlan playing in the background, you know.
Could you say no to a deep one like this?
Yeah. I will remember you.
We need one of those commercials like they have with like the the pets in need of homes, but it'll just be slow motion black and white of deep ones.
For only 30 cents a day, you too can give a deep one some health services.
Our next job title will go out to Nicholas R. Messenger. You are taking on the important role of Cyclopean city planner. Well, that's a sizable job to take on, so I hope you're up to architectural snuff, but I'm sure you are.
And then our last one for today is George Albert, I'm going to say Go, like Van Gogh, George Albert Go, who is our Unspeakable Oath Compliance Officer. We've been getting word that there's people cheating out of their unspeakable oaths, so we need someone to make sure that we're staying compliant, and the people who are taking the oath are being held accountable. So, Mr. Go, I'm going to call you Mr. Go, go check in on that. Why did I do that? That wasn't funny at all.
It's simply unspeakable.
It was just, yes, one might call it unspeakable.
You know what we can speak about, though, Nick?
What
is the community news.
We can, yes. Yeah, all right, so we have a couple of new things here. First of all, we want to talk about Horrors Without Borders, which is a charity stream coming up at the end of February. It is on Saturday, February 27th. Great Old Ones Gaming, us, the Mythos Busters, I almost said Mythos Busters like we are a separate entity. Great Old Ones Gaming, ourselves, Drawn to the Flame, Winging It, a bunch of other content creators for Arkham are going to be taking over the Great Old Ones Gaming Twitch stream on Saturday, the 27th, for this charity stream. Anything you donate during the stream, all the proceeds go towards Doctors Without Borders. You might catch the clever title connection, Horrors Without Borders, Doctors Without Borders. There's no
that wordplay. Mm-hmm. Amazing.
Oh, it's so satisfying. And after the event, anyone who donated will be entered into a drawing for prizes. So not only are you donating, but you have a chance to win some really cool stuff that has been put forth by these different community contributors. And also, we will be matching the first $300 donated. So once we get to that point, Mythosbusters will be throwing our money in as well to help speed it along, which is awesome. It's going towards a great cause. And you can check out, I see Sub-Zero Joe already took care of that in Discord chat. And if you're listening to this on the RSS feed, you can find the link in the show description. Or the podcast episode description. But yeah, mythosbusters.com/horrors without borders. And Horrors Without Borders have hyphens between the words there. So check it out. Saturday, February 27th. It's all day. And donate. Maybe win some prizes, but feel good about giving money to a good cause. And then, have we announced what we're doing for that?
I don't know if we have, but I'm sure we can.
Okay, well, what we will be doing, as we had a lot of you who saw our War of the Outer Gods blind playthrough a little while ago, and that was super entertaining, but we're not going to take it lying down. We are going to recollect ourselves, and then for Horrors Without Borders, we're going to reattempt War of the Outer Gods, now knowing what to expect. So you can look forward to the Mythos Busters collected second attempt at that scenario for the charity stream. Super
Kluver
excited.
Jim.
Yeah.
Kluver Jim. That's...
Yep.
Yeah. Those skulls don't stand a chance. Big Kahuna, no, not same decks.
No.
We are teching hard against this. This is going to be, like, Iron Man level prep. Maybe.
Well, yeah.
But for a standalone.
Yeah, we're coming back with a vengeance, or at least trying to.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll come back with a vengeance. That vengeance may not be successful.
Yeah.
And then finally, just want to remind everybody once more that FFG Play and Share is still going on. Tag social media posts with hashtag FFG Play and Share. For more info, go to Fantasy Flight Games website. You can find more information about that whole social media event there. But basically, post on social media, tag FFG Play and Share, and unlock some extra content for your favorite FFG games.
Kluver Jim. That's... Yeah. Those skulls don't stand a chance. Big Kahuna, no, not same decks. We are teching hard against this. This is going to be, like, Iron Man level prep. Maybe.
Right. Well,
That campaign has been going on for a long time. Like, it is almost 4 months. And I'm just going to wager. I don't know the actual numbers. I'm sure someone who knows how to Twitter things would. I want to know what game has the most entries for it. I think it might be Arkham.
I bet Marvel has a lot, but I'm going to guess that Arkham is pretty high, if not first.
Yeah, possibly. All right. Well, we are speeding through this. We're already on our main topic. So,
real
guys,
quick, before we dive
yes.
into Innsmouth, did we want to talk about the War of the Outer Gods?
Yeah, let's do that now.
Yep.
Why not? Since we're leading off on that. So, guys, I guess this is kind of a spoiler warning for War of the Outer Gods, if you haven't played that, because we're going to discuss that a bit more at length. So, there's your warning. And go.
So do we want to talk about the decks that we brought first, maybe?
Yeah, sure. I brought Sniper Mark. So basically, Mark Harrigan somehow attaching a scope to a machine gun or a Thompson and somehow shooting things at a distance. And I basically stayed near the middle and it just kind of killed things. And it was pretty reliable, except for the times where I drew like 4 curses in a row or the tentacle after a couple curses. But I was basically, I was all combat. I had absolutely no cluing ability, was my deck.
Yeah, I was, as has been mentioned in Discord chat already, I brought a Branda Sharp, which is Amanda Sharp, with the time-worn brand. And then I got cheeky and threw in Ace of Rods and Council's Coffers, because I was like, man, how sick would it be to get Council's Coffers off in 4-player? But then I ended up committing Council's Coffers on, like, my first test.
Yeah, it was like 3 tests in. It's like, well, that 2 or 3 XP was worth a wild icon.
So that was fun. Yeah, there were a lot of curses, and I wasn't the sole contributor, but I did contribute a lot, because I was running double Promise of Power, or no, double Deep, Promise of Power, and double Deep Knowledge, and I had the Accursed Fate, or whatever the weakness is that just adds 5 curse tokens to the bag.
So did I.
Yeah, we
both got
weren't the
Accursed
only
Fate.
ones with curse tokens being thrown in. Because Ian also had some curses to share.
So I played Trish. My first time playing Trish in multiplayer, actually. Mostly a Clover build. But of course, just because of the nature of what Trish does and her ability, a little bit of enemy management in terms of evading. So there wasn't anything too tricky going on there. I did have Faustian Bargain in terms of curses, and then I also had Accursed Follower as my weakness, as one of my weaknesses.
Right, yeah.
So I think it's not even like we leaned hard into curses. We happened to get all the curse weaknesses, which was honestly like 2/3 of the curses that ended up in the bag was probably those more than anything. But overall, I thought the deck was fine. Again, it was just a problem of what we can get into of us not advancing an act when we had a chance to, and then all the clues I had and Sean had would have been more useful. But because we didn't do that, I felt like I had a lot of turns where, like, I guess I'll get more clues even though we have a ton, when what we really needed was to clear the board. And so for the deck that I'll play on our second try, I'm looking to do some more damage output. I kind of feel like we were, as a group, missing out on a little bit of damage output.
Well, that's true. Because I did say I would be dedicated damage with a Branda. But then I, for some reason, decided not to include Overpower in my deck. Because I was like, card draw? I don't need card draw. Completely missing the fact that it comes with 3 combat icons.
Well, did it help that your Time-Worn brand got discarded by something at one point? I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, no, that also sucked. Who was Sean playing again? I'm trying to remember the investigator that he brought.
He was playing Gloria, and he was kind of a Flexi Gloria, mostly clues, but had some like self-defense.
Yeah. Okay. And
Yeah.
for our reattempt, I will be doing Clover Jim. Because I love me some Jim. I haven't played him in a while, and I want to feel effective after a Brandon Sharp. I want to feel like I can contribute.
Yeah, I my current plan is I'm going with Demolition Man Nathaniel, which is mostly typical Nathaniel tricks, which I think will be good in this scenario. One of the reasons I'm picking him is because he can really leverage some of those effects that are, grabbing aloof enemies and engaging them and punching them. But then the demolition part is because I'm throwing dynamite and grenades in there. So he's going to be punching, but also blowing stuff up.
I'm sticking with Sniper Mark. I'm gonna tune it a bunch. There's things that worked, things that didn't work. Yeah, I've got some tweaks to make, but I think the deck worked out pretty well. There was a few turns where I was just an absolute wrecking machine. There was one dynamite blast where I took 3 enemies out, and before that, if I'd not drawn the tentacle, I was going to like snipe a guy on one location and then flip the dynamite to this other location, all while standing in the middle. Like, it was just a super awesome turn. So I'm really happy with the way it worked. It's just a few cards here and there that I'm going to switch around. I think some things just weren't worth the XP cost. I'm not sure about Stick to the Plan and Versatile with Astounding Revelation. I'm not sure if it's worth it.
I think that's getting a bit too cutesy.
But it's such a good combo to start out with 7 resources. And, I mean, Mark makes up for Versatile in his card draw, plus Stick to the Plan takes a card out. I don't know.
I think we definitely learned some lessons in that first playthrough. Like, it's the War of the Outer Gods is... I overall really like the scenario, but like a lot of standalones, I think it's kind of designed to be... how do I want to... I wanted to say cute, but cute's not the right word. It's designed to introduce like a lot of creative mechanics, because they're meant to be played at these big events usually, and so that they need to be very kind of new and interesting. But what all that means is usually your initial play, your face check is going to have some trouble. And I think that was the case for us, especially like one of the things that stood out to all of us, I think, is the amount of aloof is just ridiculous. There's so much aloof.
Which ends up making my my Sniper Mark really effective, because he can ignore aloof. And a lot of those enemies are only 2 health. So that's just the upgraded Guardian Thompson, just like boop, boop, boop.
Are you
right?
going to run Riot Whistle, or do you think that's not needed?
I have it in my deck currently for Nathaniel.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I think... Well, Sniper Mark, I don't want them engaged. That's the thing.
Sure.
I prefer them not. And I want to keep my accessory slot open for Hallowed Mirror, just because I have such little sanity, and that's a very dangerous place to be with Mark, is a long game. Like, I think Mark is really good if you don't take him in too long of a game, but over time, as that horror starts to pile up, is like, oh god, like, you really need a plan for it, so...
I think it'll kind of be interesting. I'm not sure if I've really played with a team like this before, where you have 2 Guardians, but one's more like the melee fighter and one is like the ranged counterpart. That'll be interesting.
I think it'll work decently well, I think, this time. Like, if we, like, looking at the Arkham map, if we start out in the middle, like, if you go off in one of the 2, or one of the 3... not corners, but like one of the 3 paths. Either was it New York, Montreal, and Providence?
Yes, Providence.
Yeah. I think that's correct.
Like, if you just like take care of one of those, and I snipe from the middle on the other 2, or something like that, you know what I mean? Like, I think balancing that out.
I'll probably head for the green side, because apparently Team Egg is strong, and
Yeah.
I need to punch them as soon as they pop up near those eggs.
Well, it seems like they're kind of the default right?
I think it's because they act first in the turn order. Because each enemy faction, they follow a specific turn order, and green goes first. And they also tend to be just the straight combat monsters, so them going first usually results in them taking other enemies out, rather.
Yeah.
So.
To borrow a term from Magic, they have first strike.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think that's one of the things I like about this scenario a lot is those 3 different cults, and it's almost like you're taking on 3 different decks that someone else is playing, because the green, they're kind of their whole thing is like attaching to their enemies and building them up and growing them bigger, and the red has like the swarm mechanics, a bunch of swarm of little ones. I can't remember what the blue does actually, because I feel
blue
like we didn't
was
see a
like
ton of blue.
discard and stuff like that.
Yeah,
like, I think they dropped cards from your hand and that sort of thing.
Yeah, they're like blue from Magic.
Yeah, so
Right.
green is like green from Magic, and blue is like blue from Magic.
Oh my god, they actually are.
They actually kind of fit that. You know, it's funny, and we can talk about Magic on this episode because Sean's not here.
That's true.
So, I'm really excited to hear his reaction to this whole segment. Yeah, Big Kahuna. Yeah, blue has a lot of Doom acceleration too.
Oh, that's right.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a really cool aspect of the scenario. Those 3, like, and kind of the whole warring with each other, and because I think we took the approach of just killing them and getting them off the board, which you kind of have to do, because the first act is you can't advance it till all cultists are off the board. But we talked about on the stream, there's another approach you can take where you kind of let the cultists war it out amongst themselves and pick up the pieces afterwards.
And I think that's been recognized as generally the easier way to go about it, is just to sit back and let the game play itself until the 11th hour. So,
well, MJ brought up, like, when we were streaming it, they were in the chat, and they brought up that that is easier if you're playing in a single group, but if you're playing like the epic multiplayer version, that doesn't work for an individual table.
You better be on the same page.
Going full damage,
Yeah.
We brought 4 Seekers. Oh,
yeah. I think that'd be a very interesting way to try it. I don't think this next time we play at Horrors Without Borders, it's not how we're going to play. But I feel like that would be a very interesting way to, like, just pick a side, probably blue, maybe, like, and then like let green and red and blue just attack each other. I'm thinking, like, because red has that swarm guy that doesn't have aloof, and the green guys get really big, and the blue guys are just kind of, they add doom and treacheries and stuff, but you just camp out in blue side, kill who you need to kill, let them fight. When big bad comes out, who will probably be the green guy, the egg.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to look
downtown.
at the different big bosses and see if one of them is like the easiest to take down for that purpose.
Yeah. Sub-Zero's asking in chat, did you guys read the variant of randomizing the order of the cults?
Oh, no. That's interesting.
No, or randomizing the order every turn. That'd be pretty fun, actually.
Oh, that's some fun chaos. I didn't know there's variants. That's really cool. Because part of me was thinking, like, is it going to get kind of samey if green is always going first? But that's pretty cool. I like that.
This scenario, so this is, I think, talking more broadly in, as far as standalone scenarios go in general, the difficulty level and the challenges presented felt like a really good level for me. Like, I think we mostly brought, like, we each had a couple cutesy little tricks in our deck, but we brought like, well,
some more than others.
So Nick brought enough cutesy tricks for everybody.
Yeah,
but,
you guys brought actual decks, and I was
brought enough for the rest of the class.
Yeah. If you're gonna have one, you gotta share with everyone else. But he did bring Council's Coffer, so
I tried to share.
Yeah. But like we brought like decent decks, right? And we looked over each other's decks and like, hey, maybe try this card or that or whatnot. And the reason we failed was because of choices we made.
Yes.
And it wasn't because the deck comboed out on us, or sorry, the encounter deck comboed out on us, or it's just an unbelievably difficult face check of a scenario. And I feel like this is kind of right where I like my side scenarios, especially the first time playing it, because I felt the entire time, even after we had lost Sean and like stuff was not going well, we may have had a chance. Like I had that the entire time till maybe like the last couple turns where it's like, okay, how do we want to die, right?
Sure, yeah. Yeah,
But
it did feel pretty good.
Yeah, it felt like there was a chance, and maybe it wasn't a good chance towards the end of it, but at least we were in it. The big thing is that it really just came down to that initial decision of like, okay, we came to a point, we had enough clues, should we advance? And the scenario basically played with our accepted wisdom of Arkham Horror, the card game, which is usually you wait to advance the act, because sometimes it does bad stuff. Like usually you should have enough actions available on your investigators to advance. But in this case, since there was kind of another restraint on it, which you can't advance unless there's cultists, we waited, and then it wasn't, I don't know, like 10 turns later until we got all the cultists off the board again.
It took so long.
It was like every time we cleared the board, more would pop out during the Mythos phase, and so if we would have advanced, that's so many turns we would have had to do the objective. But that's what happens in a face check. You learn not to do that again. So next time, the first chance we have to advance, we're advancing. I don't care how many actions we have.
So one of the questions that I see pop up a lot surrounding standalones is like, where does it fall in the difficulty? Like, compare it to other standalones. How do you guys feel about War of the Outer Gods compared to the spectrum of, gosh, I don't know what the easiest one would be. Probably Rougarou.
I think Rougarou now, because you can game it.
Yeah. Versus the other side of the spectrum, which is Abyss.
Yes.
Like, where would you put War in there? To me, it felt kind of like Blob-ish. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. That's what I was going to say. It felt standalone Blob-ish to me, where, I don't know. The enemies are manageable as long as you keep pace with them and don't ignore them. And clues are scattered, but they're not like, a bunch of 5 and 6 and 7 shroud locations. Like it's a normal variance of shroud levels.
Right.
Yeah, I'd put it about there. Like, I think Abyss is probably still the top of the difficulty in terms of standalones. But this would be around Blob level and higher than some of the other ones. Which I agree with Scott. I think that's a good level for it. Like, it was kind of in the sweet spot, I felt like.
Totally.
This is one I could see myself playing on hard.
Oh, sure.
Whereas there's other standalones where it's like, I'm not going to touch on hard. In fact, I don't like playing them on standard, right? Egypt. I need to build a very specific deck to take into Egypt if I'm going standalone. If it's part of a campaign, then I'm like, okay, well, that's a different story. But that bag is just so brutal.
Right.
And that scenario is just so unforgiving. And I like that we have something like that. I think every game needs something like that, right? Like, you need that high watermark of difficulty. I'm not necessarily going to play it all the time, even though I love those scenarios. It's just, but I could see myself playing War of the Outer Gods tons of times. Like, it's right where I want it.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask is, are you guys planning on playing War of the Outer Gods like more times, like 2, 3, 4 more times before we sit down and have our rematch?
I'm going to try to play at least once or twice more, minimum 2 players, just to get a handle on all the like treacheries and the different enemies. And
yeah, same. I'll probably try it. I don't know how much time I'll have, but yeah, probably once 2-handed. I'm curious to try it true solo, not so much as a practice, but just because I'm always curious how the standalones stand up in true solo, which usually they don't work that well for true solo, which is fine. They're like, as I mentioned before, usually they're meant for special events, and like something like Abyss, for example, is just freaking ridiculous for true solo because you have so much space to cover. Whereas this is more of a hub structure of the map, which is kind of interesting. I wonder how that would shake out in true solo.
It reminded me a lot of Rougarou, actually, the shape of the map, because it's got the three spindles, essentially, or 3 spokes.
Spokes, yeah.
Yeah.
Sub-Zero Joe in chat is asking about the effects of losing War of the Outer Gods if it's inserted into your campaign. I didn't read that part of the guide, so I don't have an answer for that right now. Do you guys know?
I do. So, spoiler alert, if you don't want to know whether it can end your campaign or not. Well, you should know the spoiler alert anyways. Yeah, it can kill you. In fact, we died.
Yep.
You investigators are killed, your campaign can end.
Yep.
Oh,
So be
I was checked out
very
by then,
careful.
so I don't remember that.
Yeah. It is a world devastating event if one of those 3 outer gods wins. So
Turns out not to be a good thing.
yeah.
Did you guys look at
Because
the story rewards at all? Where this
I did. I don't remember them. Like, I remember looking at them after we played, but I honestly don't remember what I thought of them.
Yeah, I saw a few of them. They're very interesting. I really like the cloak.
Yeah, I have to remind myself of that one. Okay, it has charges, and when a non-elite enemy would engage you, spend a charge to exhaust that enemy. Ooh, I did remember like that one too.
So now I have a question though. It just says when they would engage you, exhaust it. Would it still engage you though? Because I think it does.
Yeah, that's
You just
a good
exhaust it.
point.
No, because
Yeah.
it's when it would, and exhausted enemies don't engage on their own.
Right. When it
Yeah, it's when.
it
you're right.
would engage you, so
Yeah.
exhaust it instead. Yeah, the instead makes me think that instead of engaging you, it's getting exhausted.
And then there's Pocket Portal for when you want to play Luke but don't want to be a mystic necessarily.
When you don't want to take the full plunge. Yeah.
Dreaded Gift, or no, Dreaded End. It's 3 charges. It's an arcane slot. Action, spend a charge. Choose one. Either place a non-elite enemy at your location on top of the encounter deck, or look at the top 5 cards in the encounter deck, discard 2 of them, and return the rest of the top in any order.
So when you
That'd be
kind
great
of
for
want to
Gloria.
play Gloria.
Yeah. Scrying of Insomnia there is kind of what that is.
Blade of Arcat, you exhaust it and spend a resource to put a resource on it, and you get +1 combat for each resource on it. And if you succeed, you can remove up to 3 resources to deal that much additional damage to the target. Yeah, that's good.
That is nice.
If you're if you're a resource machine.
Well, and the blade doesn't have to be ready to fight with it, so you can charge it and then fight right after with it. That's pretty cool.
That reminds me of the blade from... Oh, it's kind of like Hungering Blade,
Yeah.
but less
Way easier
hurty.
to set up.
Less hurry, yeah.
Because
And
instead
then-
of killing enemies to feed it, you just chuck resources on it.
Yeah, you just
It-
pay it.
It's Rogue Hungering Blade.
And then there's Enchanted Skull, which is does that take up a slot? It does not. It's a relic.
Accessory.
Oh, it is accessory. Oh, yep, there it is. Fast action, exhaust Enchanted Skull, place the top card of your deck face down underneath Enchanted Skull. Fast action 2, the fastening, you get +1 to this skill test for each card underneath Enchanted Skull, then discard 1 card from underneath Enchanted Skull at random. Okay. For when you don't want to play the cards in your deck.
I mean... Yeah.
Although I could see a survivor that's digging from the discard pile, maybe using this.
Yeah, I mean... If you spend the first 4 or 5 turns getting that under, so you're at like 5 cards, that means like your next test, you're at +5. Or once a turn, you can be +5 on any test.
Right.
Because I assume you'll replace it during that turn and exhaust it, but then you'll use it. Like, yeah.
It's almost kind of like, well, not really. I was going to say it's almost kind of like an inverse Key of Ease, in that Key of Ease gets better, like it gets better over time the worse you do, and this one, like, it kind of degrades over time, but never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're neat. They're fun. They remind me... This one oddly reminds me of Blob. And not... How do I put this? Okay, so looking at the Epic multiplayer version, it reminds me of Blob in that sense, because it seems like, there's the bigger overarching score of these outer gods.
Yeah.
The difficulty reminds me of about that. The movement needed kind of reminds me of Blob. The Blob needs a bit more. Blob is just a huge map. But you can kind of stay in a corner, which is also something you can do in this scenario. And the story assets that you can get are these weird hijinks, kind of fun things. Like, there's so many Blob vibes, and myself liking Blob, yeah, this scenario is fantastic. I love it.
I really appreciate the direction that we've gone with the rewards from standalones, because I keep looking back at Carnival and thinking, what? The masks are fine, but boy, are they not interesting.
They're good if you're Yorick.
Sure.
Because you can keep on playing them over and over and over again. Yeah.
Yeah, I think having this grab bag of goodies approach that both Blob and the scenario have, I appreciate. I think the big question was, would you risk your campaign to try to get your hands on one of these?
Depends on how bad the campaign is going already.
Well, it can't be going too bad, because this one costs 3 XP to slot in.
I ignore the XP cost every single time. Every single time.
Not gonna lie, I kind of do that as well. I honestly think it should just be a flat rate of 1 XP for a side scenario, just so you can't play it right off the beginning, and 1 XP you can get back.
I don't know. I feel like it shouldn't cost anything. I don't know. I don't understand what, like... Okay, because there's the potential that you can come out of it better than you went in, but
I think that's the point. Like, every scenario is like that. You can come out better than when you went in.
And you can also come out way worse. Like, this could end your scenario. Or your campaign. Obviously, the scenario's going to end. But they could end the campaign. Like, geez. I don't...
Yeah, because it's supposed to be, from my perspective, like a risk-reward thing. Like, the scenarios are like, you're taking the risk of either trauma or ending your whole campaign, whatever the case may be. And the reward for taking that risk is that you get something good. So it seems like spending XP is kind of unnecessary from that perspective.
Yeah, there's enough risk already baked into how the game works. We don't need... I like what Squidbeer says in chat. I would like to see a standalone scenario where it doesn't cost XP up front, but then if you want one of the rewards, you have to maybe reduce the XP you earn from the scenario. And if you didn't earn enough XP, then maybe you don't get it. You know what I mean? Like, maybe something like that.
I've heard of a variant of that where basically it doesn't cost you to go into the scenario, but at the end you reduce the amount of XP you earned based on the starting XP. So,
sure.
Yeah, that's fine.
Like,
it's a tax.
Yeah, if stuff goes awry, you didn't lose XP. Essentially.
I like that.
Yeah, that's not bad.
So, yeah, interesting ways to change it up. And I mean, I don't think the FFG police are going to come down, knock on your door or anything. But
I mean, they haven't yet, and I haven't paid XP for a standalone since Arugaroo. So.
and they let you design one. So,
I know.
I mean...
I honestly, I don't even know how much Excelsior costs to go into it.
Nick, you put it at 2. As a guy who's complaining about the XP cost, I was like...
So, okay, peek behind the curtain here. MJ asked me towards the end of the process, how much do you want it to cost? And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, well, maybe 2 because there's, and he's like, because they can get this, and they almost always get a weapon, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, sure. And that was it. And maybe it was 3. I don't know. Big Kahuna is saying, doesn't it cost 3? Point is, I don't know, because I don't pay it. And I can't speak for all the scenarios, but guys, I'm going to give you permission. You don't have to pay it for Excelsior either.
You heard it here.
Well, there you go. Now there's two free standalones: Consternation on the Constellation and Hotel. Equally as official scenarios in my eyes. So, all right. Well, that's War of the Outer Gods. Guys, are you ready to dive in? Get it to Innsmouth?
Lovely.
Just jump in feet first.
Get our toes wet.
Into the cold, slimy water. Oh. Ian, why don't you lead us through this? Since you did the dissonant voices, as we discussed before the show.
I did.
You've read every single word of this campaign guide.
I have in very close detail and reminded myself of several details that I forgot the first time I read, which is often what happens. So, Innsmouth Conspiracy obviously deals with the city of Innsmouth, and this box, as most of the boxes do, introduces some kind of new mechanics, some new flavors, some overall new experiences that we can talk about before we dive into the scenarios. But I'm curious to hear kind of in a general sense what you guys think about this, is there's a fractured narrative, which means this is the first Arkham campaign that really uses a storytelling mechanism that's used in like different movies and TV shows, where you start in one time period and then you flash back to a time period and then it brings you back to the present. Almost like, I mean, there's tons of examples, but if you think about like a True Detective where it's happening in several time periods at once, like that's what Innsmouth Conspiracy is doing. So how have you guys felt about that so far?
I've really enjoyed it. I think it's really cool. I think it works. Another bullet point on here is delayed experience. Like, you don't get to spend your experience right away, but honestly, I haven't noticed that to be too big of an issue. I really like it from a narrative perspective. I'm probably gonna say this more than once tonight, but like, I could do with a little less story text. Like, just like 300 words less. That would be great.
I always love hearing you say that, Nick, because we have Nick, who's an author, perennial dungeon master, who always says he wants less story text.
I hope I don't get too verbose in D&D. Like, both of you having played for me, I hope that I don't like because my thing is like, and with Arkham, I approach it differently because I still approach it as a card game first. You know what I mean? Arkham. Yeah. It's not like the selling point of Arkham to me is not the narrative experience. That's the icing and cherry on the cake. Like, it's really good, but that's to this day, I don't play Arkham because I'm like, ooh, what cool stories next? I play it for the awesome mechanics, for the emergent narrative that kind of comes out from the process of playing the game, you know? Like, to this day, I still think about opening the secret passage in that Carcosa scenario. I can't remember the name of it now. Echoes of the Past. Opening the secret passage, rolling the dynamite through, and blowing up a bunch of cultists. Like, I still think of that. So, yeah. And the narrative text is great. It's well written. I mean, MJ does a great job with it, and I don't want to downplay that at all. It's just a little. It's approaching too much for my personal taste. So,
I think we're on the same line, Nick. Like it's a bit verbose for me. The thing is, it's a really good story.
Yes,
and I think it's okay for MJ to be doing what they're doing. And the reason I think that is, as much as Arkham Horror, the card game, was pitched as like half card game, half RPG, you're right. Like, for me, the stories are in the story of playing, right? And the fact that, like, when you're playing multiplayer, you have a certain amount of actions, and there's turns, and there's an act and agenda. Like, there's a story going on. And the stuff we read in between is fluff, and I'm not meaning fluff in a degenerate or a derogatory way. It's just extra story. But at the same time, I'm also able to skim that. And so when I want to get to card games, I can like quickly ask someone else, or turn on dissonant voices. But I can quickly ask someone else, like, "Hey, what's the gist? Like, what are we doing? Oh, we're going to go find this person. Cool, sounds good." Like that's enough for me. And yeah, I am enjoying the fractured narrative. I think if the goal of that narrative and the delayed experience and all this is to make you feel confused, it's working. Like the story is disjointed and I'm like, hey, wait, what time period am I in? Right, it's very Memento feeling.
Yeah.
If you ever watched that movie Memento,
I do have that
fantastic
experience
movie.
too of like sometimes I have to remind myself which time period a scenario is taking place in, for sure. I know, and we've talked about this before, but I think I'm the person on the cast that is probably the most bullish about the long story text. Like, I like having the huge long walls of text because I know I'm going to read it once, and I probably won't read it again until January.
Sure.
Like, what I often do is I won't read it again all the other times I play until like a few months have passed, and then I'll go back and read it again and be like, oh, I didn't notice that the first time. So to me, it doesn't bother me, except for when I'm doing dissonant voices and actually have to record it all. But when I'm just playing, like, because I do kind of approach it, obviously it's mostly a card game to me, but I do approach it as really kind of a mix of RPG and card game, and that's what kind of pushes it to the top for me in terms of these kind of card games. Because I've played some other kind of co-op card games where I'm like, I wish there was more story to this because it just feels kind of empty. I think the like Pathfinder adventure card game is like the most egregious example where they would have no story text for a scenario. It's just like a couple sentences on each like location and card. So that's an egregious example. It's not a great example, but I guess what I'm saying is I appreciate not only... I mean, I don't appreciate the text for text's sake, but I appreciate that MJ tries out all these different narrative structures. Like, not only does each cycle explore new mechanical territory, but each cycle tends to explore new narrative territory, too. Like, Carcosa, we got this weird, like, unreliable narrator thing, and Forgotten Age was told through journal entries, and it's like an exploration narrative, and this is like what we talked about, the fractured piece. But yeah, if I had one, it's not even necessarily a negative, but one thing that gives me pause is the kind of potential confusion of and this is mostly just my fault of not paying attention to the delayed experience piece of it, because I did have one playthrough, my initial playthrough, where I spent XP before a scenario and I wasn't supposed to. So, yeah.
See, and I had the opposite, where my Sister Mary, Father Mateo combination, I didn't spend experience until I started Devil Reef, and I was like, wait a minute. I went back
like
and
30
read.
XP.
Yeah, and that's totally on me for not reading everything. You know what I mean? But I was just like, this is like, why? When do I spend this? It's like, oh, I could have spent it there, and I could have spent it there. I missed two checkpoints. Okay, well, let's just do that now.
Yeah, because the delayed XP is supposed to be, like, if we break down what it's supposed to represent. So it's supposed to be, let's see if I have this right. It's supposed to be XP you got... Okay, let's just think about these two first Innsmouth scenarios. So you get XP in the first scenario, right? But does it let you spend it right away before the second scenario? It does, right?
It does not. I don't... Oh, maybe it... I think it lets you do that... Gosh, I don't remember now. All I know is that you get the extra experience in Pit of Despair by unlocking your memories. So to me, that's what the experience represents, is you like piecing together the past, like what happened.
Right. Yep. I am looking it up right now. We had some wonderful preparation for this episode, obviously. I think at the beginning of scenario 2 is when it lets you spend your XP, if I remember.
I think it's during set. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah.
Yeah, each investigator may now spend the experience recorded under unspent experience.
So,
Which is kind of weird, right? Because you're getting XP from, like, we'll talk in depth about these scenarios, but just talking about the delayed XP piece, like, because you get XP from scenario 1, and some of that's coming from flashbacks, and so that makes sense that, okay, you get that from your flashback, and then so you're kind of applying that XP, what you learned to the past, though? Isn't even the flashback stuff is supposed to have, some of that's supposed to have happened after the events in scenario 2, right? So this is twisting my brain a little bit.
it is a little
This
weird.
is kind of where the fractured narrative loses me. Because this feels... And I mean, we joke about the prep, but I read through this before we started the cast, and I'm still confused. And maybe that's on me. And I like the idea of the fractured narrative and feeling confused. But when it comes to gameplay implications of, like, Nick, like you said, you didn't spend it until Devil Reef. I mean, that's on you for not reading.
Right.
But also, like, it makes the spending of XP disjointed, and I'm not sure that is necessary or is doing what the goal is for that
Right, you
fractured
don't know
narrative.
if
If that
it's
makes sense.
accomplishing what you... Because it's really weird that you're instructed not to spend the experience, but during setup of Scenario 2, you get to spend the experience from Scenario 1. So it's... Effectively,
So
it's
essentially
not
the same?
delayed. It's the you know what I mean? You still spend it before you play Scenario 2. And then also with Scenario 2, as we'll talk about later, you get to spend that experience at the end of the interlude after Scenario 2. So, but in those first two scenarios, the delay is almost like a superficial delay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, because when we were first talking it through right now, and even when I first encounter it in the campaign log, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Like, you can't spend the XP because you're going back in time for the second scenario, so you haven't gotten that XP yet. So probably once you won't have it in the past, and then when you go back into the present, then the XP will come to you because you're back in the present and you've gotten that XP. But then that's like we talked about, that's not actually how it works. And it's kind of complicated because some of that XP you're getting, a lot of it is from these flashbacks. So then, yeah, it's just complicated, I guess.
The only way that I can make sense of it, and I think it only works for Pit of Despair and Disappearance, is that so you start with 0 XP in Pit of Despair because you don't remember anything, and then you piece together the bits, and then you spend the experience going into Disappearance, and that's supposed to imply that, like, now your deck is closer to what it was in the past when you had all those when you had all the quote unquote experience. You know what I mean?
Sure,
But
that
I
makes
think-
sense to me.
Yeah, but I think it might fall apart after Disappearance because I forget the rhythm of when you get to spend it after that. Casey, Mr. Trench in chat is saying, I'm overthinking this. You are right. Let's move on.
I think at some point by the end of the cycle, I am going to have like a wall of connected papers that just have the timeline of all the scenarios.
It's going to be a Pepe Silva.
Yep.
Whatever.
And
yeah.
when you can spend the XP and all that. All right, so let's leave the delay behind. So a couple of other new things that were added and that we actually got new tokens for, which usually doesn't happen in deluxe expansions for LCGs. I mean, it's happened a couple times for various games, but usually doesn't happen. We got new key tokens and flood tokens in this box.
Yeah, the key the key idea we saw in oh god, now I can't remember the name of the entire campaign, The Witches in the Woods.
The Circle Undone.
Circle Undone. I was like we saw it in The Greater Good, which
Greater Good.
we use the bad thing tokens or chaos tokens as kind of a stand-in. And And I think it worked really well in that scenario, and MJ just decided to double down and be like, you know what, we're doing this for a whole campaign. I think they're good. I enjoy it. Like that being a main mechanic where you have to go and find these things. The randomness sometimes makes me just want to flip the table.
Yes.
When like you get the wrong key at the wrong place, and you're like, oh,
100%. I do appreciate not having to remember what a resource on a location is yet again.
Yes.
And that's kind of like when I first opened the deluxe box, part of me was like, gosh, do we really need flood tokens? They could just be horror. Do we really need key tokens? They could just be chaos tokens. But then when you're looking at the scenario set up, you're like, okay, I can very easily tell what's going on. This is much preferred.
Yeah, it just having those clear distinctions. I think there was certain mechanics that would have just been absolutely overly complicated to try and do with just the base set of tokens.
Right.
Like you could do something like exhaust this location. Now it's half flooded. Turn it, fully rotated. Now it's fully flooded, and all these different. You could try to do that and like or put like you said, horror or damage or something on it, but. Just having flood tokens and key tokens is just so clear.
Right.
And I love it.
Yeah, and I'm just a token fiend, so any opportunity to get more blink tokens is fun. You can rain more tokens down on me in future expansions, I won't mind.
Scott, have you upgraded to wooden flood and key tokens yet?
I have not, no. And I don't know if I will. Sure. I probably will just put the flood tokens in. I'll find the right size of coin capsule. And I'm not sure about the keys. I might just find a coin capsule that fits them. Because that's what I've done with the chaos tokens. So.
Sure. Every time I dump out my tokens, I get a little wooden arrow that pops out. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Scott has a bunch of wooden tokens. Because you handed out those arrows.
Oh yeah,
so
the wooden arrows I bought specifically for the bow.
The bow's important. Yeah, I like both the key and flood mechanic. The key is kind of having like an extra layer on top of clues. Clues are very abstract and represent a lot of things, and the keys can be equally abstract and represent a lot of things, but they can be a little bit more flexible and do things that clue tokens can't, just because of the mechanics of the game. So. It's just a fun mechanic, I think. And then the flood tokens, just being able to do that flip from like partially flooded to fully flooded, like it's another thing to track in the game. And sometimes there's already a lot to track in the game. But generally, I'm glad it's there for what it does for the kind of some of the scenarios. And, we're talking about Pit of Despair specifically this time in terms of flood, like just... adding a pressure of a different kind.
Right.
God, that flood pressure feels real.
The tide is rising. And then before we get into Pit of Despair, the final couple of things that this box has introduced. One is this little mechanic, which is removing bad stuff tokens from the bag.
What an interesting mechanic!
Yeah, I thought that seems really cool. I like that mechanic a lot.
Yeah. Huh. Yep.
I mean, reminder to everyone to go play Consternation on the Constellation.
I mean, I don't like. This is just such a natural progression for the game. Like, not like it's not something that we should be patting ourselves on the back for inventing or anything. Like it's just another way of interacting with the chaos bag, which I really thoroughly enjoy, and I'm glad that MJ has brought it into the game proper.
Yep. I mean, it's part of the whole reason why we got the strength of the chaos bag mechanic compared to like all the people at the beginning of this game who were clamoring for dice. Like the fact that the bag contents can be manipulated within scenarios on the fly is important, and it lets you do cool stuff like this. So yeah, I agree.
And bless and curse tokens, like
it's a natural progression. So we didn't come up with anything necessarily earth shattering and consternation, but it's not surprising that it showed up here. And the last point that Innsmouth has done, and I think this is going to roll us into Pit of Despair, actually, is there's a lot of deep ones. Like, a lot of deep ones.
And not even are there
So
a lot
many
of deep
ones.
but the fact that they do something just when they show up. Like, okay, come on, guys. You all can settle down just a little bit.
Yeah.
I was not expecting my face check is usually always a true solo campaign. In this case, it was Trish. I was not expecting the amount of enemies I would have to deal with, and like you said, all this pinging you for damage and horror or discarding a card or whatever when they engage you, which everyone knows I play with a lot of evade heavy investigators. Yeah. And it kind of sucks when you evade and then they engage you again and do the same thing again.
It's kind of like the opposite of the Forgotten Age.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. No, you don't want to evade them. You want to kill them before they engage you. But even, like, what do you do to kill them before they engage you? Like, you have to engage them to kill them. Usually, it's, oh, man.
I just thought, guys, does ambush have a place in this campaign? If only it did more than 2 damage.
Or the traps.
Or the traps, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it in some ways it does actually remind me of Forgotten Age, though, in that I haven't experienced a campaign that asks you to soak so much damage and horror since Forgotten Age. Actually, if you don't have soaks in play, you're gonna have a bad time.
Yeah. Pit of Despair.
Pit of Despair.
What? I believe it was Sean who wrote this note in our notes, but fucking apt title.
That was me, but I think Sean would agree.
Yes.
So Pit of Despair, we get dropped straight into the action, like no minimal or no, I can't even remember if there's any story text leading in. I think it's very small, if anything.
You wake up in a cave.
Yeah.
And your body hurts.
Yeah. It's very okay. There's a few paragraphs, but for this game, minimal story text. And then we're dropped into it in this kind of watery pit and have to figure our way out. So, I guess before we delve into like the individual mechanics, just what are your general impressions of the scenario?
Oof.
Yeah, it's got that, we get this once every couple campaigns, or every second campaign, where the opening scenario is just an absolute kick in the genital region.
It's like it's like a pillowcase full of doorknobs.
Yeah. And you know what? I should expect it by now, but I never do.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think I'm okay with it. I think this is part of the Arkham experience, kind of, where, you know what? Maybe the first scenario is just going to be a rough one, and you do as best you can, and yeah, I don't know what else to say. Movement's really important, because that map gets big.
Yeah, it's one of those kind of start out with a small map, and it keeps expanding and expanding as you move forward. It's almost like a different take on Explore, in a way, when you have these unfolding maps.
Yeah, a little bit. The random location placement combined with the random key placement means that this is one really swingy scenario. Like, theoretically, you could have it where everything's set up in just such a way where the key locations, for, you know, no pun intended, are relatively close to each other, or they're on the other side of the map from each other. So that's rough. This one, honestly, in playing this, because I played this one a lot, I'm worried about Iron Man with this scenario.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I haven't played it above 2 players, so I'm not sure how it scales. In theory, you'd be able to cover a lot more ground in 4-player. But it's also one of those things where you all kind of have to get out of dodge successfully.
Yeah. Well, and the number of deep ones that show up, and then, like in 4-player, that board's going to be full of enemies, and I can't remember the name of the treachery now, but the one that all deep ones disengage, move, and re-engage. Deep one assault. Thank you,
Deep One
network.
Assault.
Oh my god, that one has ended this scenario for me more than once.
That is like the signature card of the scenario. Like, there's certain treacheries that define campaigns, and that is definitely one of them that I'll always associate with Innsmouth, because always have to keep it in mind. Hopefully have an answer for it, which has to be like treachery cancellation of some kind. But yeah, it's like a treachery you always have to have in the back of your mind when you're positioning yourself.
Is that the number one cancel in this scenario? Because I feel like it is.
It's probably for this campaign.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Like, I think you don't cancel. I think you save your cancels for that, unless, like, if you don't cancel this other one, you're gonna literally be removed from the scenario. You know. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I going back to your earlier point, Nick, I do agree that there's a lot of swinginess in the campaign, in this scenario, I mean, in Pit of Despair, with like the random locations and random keys. I've had plays where, you know, everything falls right and you just stroll in and get the keys you need, and then I've had where you keep getting stuck where what you need is on the opposite side of the map. There's the certain locations in the scenario that let you move from one flooded location to the other that I often forget to use. But those have been super clutch in some cases to get across the map more quickly. Although you can't,
and it sucks when they're right next to each other.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, great.
Oh, I'm taking a shortcut. Oh, wait. Right back here. Okay, so this is also where we experience flooding, obviously, for the first time, like we mentioned. How does flooding play into how you approach this scenario, if it does?
Well, it makes me think of actual, like, videos of people cave diving, and that stuff just scares the hell out of me. Like, the idea that I'd go in a cave underwater and, you know, possibly die there. That just... So this scenario, like, that whole feeling of flooding and also claustrophobia and, like, thalassophobia and just all of the phobias, like, I don't know why, but the feeling of flooding felt real.
I was going to say, I think this scenario got across that feeling of the caves filling up with water. It got across that feeling of flooding locations better to me, or
really
more
well.
viscerally to me, than future scenarios that also feature flooding. Like, even though there's other scenarios in the campaign that use the flood tokens, obviously, this was the one where it really felt like an emergency was happening. You know what I mean? Like stuff was spiraling out of control. Whereas future scenarios, it was just like, maybe it was because this took the edge off it, but future scenarios, I was just like, okay, just got to keep an eye on that location now. Okay, maybe not go there now. You know, that sort of thing. So,
Yeah. Like, I felt like I was at risk of drowning. Like, me, Scott, not Silas, the guy I was playing. Like, yeah.
It's funny when you mention the cave diving videos, because I have that same reaction when I see those, but I often get like this almost like anger, like, what are you doing? Why are you going in there? I don't want to watch this. What are you doing? No one needs the cave dive.
Some of those caves have those warning signs too, with the Grim Reaper on them, where it's
Yeah.
like, don't go in here, it's not worth your life. People have died in here, there's nothing in here worth seeing that's worth your life. And I'm like, why do people go in there? So
I saw one where it was like the opening to was so narrow that you're not even like falling through necessarily. Like, you have to like inch your way through because it's so narrow, and then you get to the water part. Just like, come on. What if you need
And
to
you- like, some
quickly
of them
get
you
out
have
of there?
And some of them, like, they have to take their tank off and squeeze through the hole and then bring the tank in through after. Just like, no.
I don't like it.
So anyways,
don't
back
like
on topic.
Yeah.
This scenario brought about those feelings. So, like, 10 out of 10, the theme, like, knocked it out of the park, or, yeah.
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 Mechanically, it's one of those things where I've had to keep a careful eye, and it's often been a source of play mistakes, like forgetting that you started at a fully flooded location. because that's one of the main mechanics in this scenario. If you start at a fully flooded location and you don't get to a partially flooded or an unflooded location by the end of your turn, then you take, I think it's like 5 direct damage, some crazy amount or something.
Yeah.
So don't let it happen, but I have had plays where I forgot that I started at fully flooded, and, so whatever tricks you can use to keep track of that for yourself. But the other key thing is, when you do start at a fully flooded location, and I've learned this the hard way, be very careful where you move. I had a play where I was started at fully flooded, and there was like one location to the right of me that was kind of a dead end. But I was like, I haven't explored there, let me go there. Oh, it's fully flooded. Oh, I don't have enough actions now to get back to a partially flooded location.
Yeah.
So when you start out fully flooded, you need to plan out your movement very carefully so that you know you're either for sure going to end up at a safe location, or don't pin yourself in a corner where you can't get back out if it turns out to be fully flooded. I like it. In our chat, Socratic Method says maybe the trick to remembering is hold your breath when you start out fully flooded.
Like you do in the movies
might work.
when the person in the movie is underwater, you hold your breath to see if you can last as long. Like, you do that.
Yes.
Then your family just hears your head thunk against the table when you pass out.
Sub-Zero Joe does mention actually a good solution to this is like just put a flood token on your investigator. Like to maybe remind you that way, right? Or just like something like a blue bead, like one of those gaming beads or something.
I like that a lot. I'm going to do that.
Yeah. Or take a gulp of a drink and hold it in your mouth for the turn. That's also
I like that one.
really practical.
That's great.
Yeah. And hold your breath at the same time. Make sure you have sleeves. Yep.
Imagine if we use some of these methods at Iron Man.
Arkham's not good enough. I want it to actually kill me.
It needs to be more immersive. Come on. Now when I play TFA, I'm going to have like a bucket of live snakes next to me. So I can remember being poisoned when I feel it coursing through my veins.
So then we also have the Amalgam.
Yeah, that's the big boss enemy that pops up at the end of Agenda 1, I believe.
Yeah.
So one of those Agenda backside enemies. And
Oh no, he's not even the backside, is he? No, he's not. He just what puts him into play?
Is he just a separate enemy? I'm misremembering.
I just remember being very scared.
Oh, it's the act. It's Act 1 that puts him into play.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. So one of those cases where you do have to be careful when you advance the act.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the amalgam of many faces on the this creature, including one Thomas Dawson, as we learn. And so he has an engage effect as well of taking one of your keys unless you let it attack you. So he's not like super tough. It's 3/2, but just more of an annoyance. And I mean, I often end up playing this scenario where I'm constantly running from enemies anyway, so it's just like adding another one to the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's got that, like, I think it was Sub-Zero Joe that mentioned it there, where he is it was Network. He's the aquatic version of the Royal Emissary. So you can kill him and he can come back. Or he's kind of like the snake in the museum.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the hunting horror.
Hunting horror, thank you. Where it goes into the depths, which is kind of like the void, but different for reasons.
Yeah. It's the void with a flood problem.
Yeah. It's a partially flooded void. Is the depths, yeah.
Yeah, this really is a scenario that kind of just whittles away your health and sanity. Like, there's no, other than the agenda text of did you start at a fully flooded location, yada yada, there really isn't anything that hits super hard. Even this enemy, the big boss enemy, is still, he's just 1 damage, 1 horror. That's not terrible, but you're going to see him a lot. There's going to be a lot of other deep ones in there that just engaging with them is going to whittle you down. So this becomes a game of attrition, I think, more in regards to your health and sanity, more than just like a, whatever a not game of attrition would be.
Yeah, when one of the big pieces of that is the bad stuff token effects, which again, lesson learned from my face check. I've been more successful in my subsequent plays than that one, and a lot of the reason is because I learned the hard lesson, as I put in our show notes, of be up by 2 or get fucked. If we look at some of these tokens, at least in standard, that is, of course. Actually, hard expert is -2 as well for these. So the cultist token, -2. If you fail and your location is flooded, take a damage. -2 for the tablet. If you fail and you control a key, take a horror. And the elder thing bumps it up to -3 if you fail and the amalgams in the depths and engage with you. But usually, like, the cultist and tablet are the ones that are going to come fast and furious.
Yeah.
So I learned, dude, it's often not worth it in this scenario to try a test at, like, even or 1 up. Just gotta wait for the icons you need. So the final piece of this scenario, like, the whole scenario revolves around getting out, but it also has kind of a push your luck element to it, which seems like, without getting into too much of the rest of the campaign, we're just focusing on the box here, but this is one of those ones where you can just get out and just do the bare minimum, but you can also push yourself to get as many of these flashbacks as possible, which are dependent on getting keys usually.
Yeah, and that's partially where the swinginess comes in, because if they're not near each other and not in a path, that's already kind of making it easier for you to get out, then it's like, how much do you want to go after them? Or if you get the key from one location and the location you use it is other side of the map, it may not be worth it, but it's also, that's where you get your extra experience. So,
Now, what kind of players are you guys? Do you for these types of scenarios, do you find yourself taking crazy risks to try to get everything, or are you more like, let me get out and make sure I survive?
I usually go as long as I can. That's my goal. That's what I do. So I'm like, okay, can I get more? That sort of thing.
I push it to the limit for sure.
I'm not surprised somehow.
Got to get every single one of those Korok seeds. Or Korok keys. Sorry, Korok keys.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah, a lot of it is just like reading the room, kind of like, how is your scenario going? Because I've definitely had that moment where I'm just like, yep, I'm going to be happy with just escaping because this is not going well. Pit of Despair, the resolutions are not too intense, really, or complicated. It's pretty much just a matter, like, you get your different number of flashbacks that you do during the scenario, but at the end of it, you either get no resolution because you were defeated, in which case you still get experience, nothing bad happens to you other than the trauma from being defeated and the loss of whatever flashbacks you didn't get, or you can get the R1 resolution, which means you got out successfully, and again, you get some XP and whatever flashbacks you got along the way. So the good news is that even if you mess up Pit of Despair, that resolution, that no resolution itself, doesn't necessarily mess up your campaign. It's more so like, how many flashbacks did you miss out on along the way?
Yeah, so even, like, I mentioned that this scenario worries me for Iron Man, but actually it might be worth it just to go ham, get as much experience as you can, and don't even necessarily worry about getting out, you know what I mean? Because you don't add anything to the campaign log, you don't add any tokens or anything like that. It literally is just get the experience and that's it. You're done.
It's just a trauma.
Yeah, it's just a trauma.
Yeah, that's
we learned from TFA.
Yeah.
Yeah. Trauma is the price we have to pay for playing the game. So
No blanket,
Yeah.
take it. We'll have to think of a good rhyme for Innsmouth. So that takes us to Interlude 1, which no decisions to make, nothing too crazy in terms of ramifications, other than you just get more XP depending on how many flashbacks you get. And if the amount of XP you get in Pit of Despair largely depends on the flashbacks, so that's kind of the main game in town. So that brings us to Scenario 2.
Yes.
I really like this one. The Vanishing of Elena Harper, where in contrast to the very short and restrained intro text for Scenario 1, Scenario 2 has about a page and a half of story text, and as I mentioned to you both before the show started, that took me like 9 minutes just to record that intro text. But
it's setting a scene.
Yes.
Like, the scene is well set.
Yes.
And you know what? The scenario is fun if you just skip it. I mean, here's the thing. Now that it's on Dissonant Voices, I will never skip it again. Mm-hmm. But you know what I mean? Like, the scenario is still fun if you just go, I just want to play it. You know what I mean?
I will move on. So
I will move on with you, Ian.
Yeah. So, kind of the story after we escape from Pit of Despair, during the interlude, I didn't mention what happens in this story, but basically you kind of meet up with a mysterious woman named Elena Harper, who turns out to be the agent that you were originally sent by Mr. Thomas
Agent Dawson.
Yep. So Agent Dawson was the one who originally sent you to Innsmouth to find his missing agent. Of course, you don't remember that at the beginning of Pit of Despair because your memory's gone, but through the flashback, you remember that initial meeting. And then once you escape from the tunnels, you meet up with Elena Harper. And then kind of with a little conversation and prompting, we have the little fade to flashback. And we go back to 5 weeks earlier with Scenario 2. And this is bringing you to when you first arrived in Innsmouth. You're getting set on your mission to find Elena Harper, who has disappeared. So that leads us into this scenario, which it introduces a kind of really fun mechanic that maybe we've seen shades of in some other gaming areas.
Clue?
Clue is one.
Clue? Yeah.
The one that jumped to my mind, of course, as a long-term Lord of the Rings LCG player is a scenario called Murder at the Prancing Pony, which had hideouts and it had villain or suspects that you were trying to figure out what was the right hideout and the right suspect. So,
and you know what? You're right. Like Ian, like immediately starting to play this scenario, I was like, "This is Murder at the Prancing Pony." Although I didn't say exactly that because I was like. Because I was playing with Casey, I was like, Casey, this is like that Lord of the Rings scenario, you know, that one with the thing, and he's like, yeah, murder. I was like, okay. However, I will say that if you liked Murder at the Prancing Pony, I think you will love this one because I think that the location play and the way MJ has like adapted the idea because of Clue or Prancing Pony like to Arkham, like knocked it out of the park. Like it just, this is my favorite version of Clue / Prancing Pony / whatever this small, super niche genre of game is. This is my favorite version now.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Prancing Pony is one of my favorite Lord of the Rings scenarios because it's so different. But the thing is, it's taking this kind of whole whodunit investigation mechanic and putting it into Lord of the Rings, which is not a whodunit investigation game.
Yeah.
Whereas Arkham is very much built from the bottom up to support exactly that kind of story and mechanic. So yeah, it just works really well in Arkham.
Yeah. This scenario this might be thus far my favorite scenario in this campaign. I'm pretty sure.
In the campaign, I think it is for sure. so far.
And I think it's also going to be, maybe, I mean, like, I don't know what else is coming out, but so far, this to me is also a super awesome standalone one as well. Because it's, each time it's going to be different, right? Because you have those five or six, I can't remember. 6, right? Hideouts
Six
and...
hideouts, 6 suspects, I believe.
Yeah,
Yep.
6 and 6. So you're going to have that difference every time, and it plays different. And when you don't accuse or find the right hideout or person, it changes how the board kind of sets up, even at that midpoint. And yeah, just the replayability of the scenario is fantastic. I love it. I can't say enough good things about this one. So
Yeah, it's a it's a fun implementation of the mechanic where it's basically like you have the hideouts and the suspects all shuffled together, and through spending clues you can reveal a certain amount of that from the deck, which lets you the important part is one of the hideouts and one of the suspects is placed aside, which are the correct suspect in the hideout, the whodunit. And then so as you look through the remainder of who's left, that's how you cross the names off of who are the kind of incorrect hideouts and suspects. But it just turns out to be kind of a fun implementation of that. And the other tricky part is as you kind of look through, by spending those clues, then you can choose one to put into play. So maybe you're putting one of those hideouts that's not really a hideout that you can go get clues and use the abilities there. But then also cards from the encounter deck get shuffled into it, so it makes your guesses less effective each time.
So Davy brings up in chat, he said, it took me 2 inefficient playthroughs of this campaign to realize, I love that, the optimal strategy is to spend the minimum clues at first and only spend more clues later. And yeah, totally, that was my realization as well, in that when you need to spend clues at first, just spend the bare minimum, because everything is new information. But near the end, you really want to dig down so you can see as much information as you can, because there's already information there that you've seen. So you don't need to see it. So yeah, you trickle at first, and then just go ham at the end.
That's interesting, because the way I've played it so far is always spending the max each time. But then that actually makes sense to me, at least the first couple times, to get kind of the drip information before you get a ton of encounter cards in the deck.
Right.
Yeah.
I've done it. I've always tried to spend as much as possible. I've only played the scenario twice, but both times I tried to get it to see as much as I can every time. Also, memory. I'm not looking at the treachery cards right now, but memory tells me that the treacheries that shuffle encounter cards into the leads deck give you a choice, like do this or shuffle a card. You know what I mean? And I will always choose the other thing. Always, 100% of the time. Like, again, I've only played it twice, but every time I've been like, nope, not putting a card in the leads deck. We're not doing that. So,
Yeah, I agree. You have to keep it as little diluted as possible, because that's the only way you're going to be successful. You have to narrow that list down to at least like a 50-50 on one of them, and then hopefully you get all of them on it. Like, generally that's been my experience of kind of a typical playthrough that's going well, is I'll get one down to like one choice that I know for sure, and oftentimes the other one will be like a 50-50 or something like that.
Yeah, I think you definitely want to have one that you know for sure, or at least as close as you can, because again, if you get both wrong, I mean, we'll get into this in the resolutions, but if you guess both wrong, then scenario's over.
yeah.
So I find I focus on either the leads or the the enemy or the location, suspect or the hideout, and it's usually the hideout, just because it gets locations out.
Well,
that
also, that's your victory points too. Are investigating the hideouts, whereas parlaying the suspects their victory 0. So it's like, well, whoop-de-doo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so-
when you have the option to put one into play, I think it's always been a location for me if I have had a choice. Like, I'm curious if there's a different strategy to take, because obviously as you take more out of the deck, you're kind of changing the ratio. So I haven't honestly sat down and thought too much about how that impacts things. I've just been more like, well, yeah, I want a location in play. I need more clues and don't want to deal with this enemy on the board, etc.
Well, you need more clues so you can look at more cards.
Yeah.
And then,
So maybe I'll try the other way sometime, but I think that's probably not the optimal strategy. Doesn't seem like it.
Yeah. Another scenario that you need a lot of movement.
Yes.
The map gets big.
Now, have you guys found any strategy in terms of like, because it's a static map. It's not one of those ones like Pit of Despair where the locations are changing around. Is there an optimal path that you tend to take?
I just tend to, whatever location I bring out first, I try to go to that area of the map and like get all the clues from that area so I never have to go back, essentially. And then as I'm looking through the leads decks to get those other locations, if possible, I try and get the ones that are close to where I am.
Yeah.
So I don't have to, like, I'm not going back and forth. I'm basically making a really slow trotting circle around the map, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, because you only get half the map at scenario start, it's not as easy as like with Midnight Masks, for instance, we all kind of agreed that our ideal route is to go south and then clockwise around the map. It was kind of what, at least last time we talked about it, I remember that kind of being the thing that we agreed on. You can't really do that with the scenario because half the map is missing, and you're not guaranteed to always get the same locations in order. You know what I mean? So I don't really have a strategy for moving between locations, but I do agree with what Scott said, where I try to prioritize the hideouts I get out to be the ones that I'm physically closest to, and then I complete that hideout before I move on.
Yeah, and maybe that's more incentive for at least the first couple parlays, just doing like a card, because if you get a location out earlier, then that can help guide which way you go. Another piece of that puzzle, though, I wonder about, strategy related, is the Innsmouth Harbor. So that's the location that after you successfully investigate it by 3 or more, look at the top card of the leads deck, then shuffle the leads deck. Group limit once per round. So you can keep doing that according to the limit. So you can keep doing that round after round, essentially. So, because a lot of times I found myself going to the left first, which is away from Innsmouth Harbor, and then eventually I end up circling around to the Innsmouth Harbor towards the end. Not necessarily by choice, that's just how a lot of my games tend to go. But then sometimes that ability is not as effective because I'm looking at just the top card of the leads deck, and it turns out to be a treachery because they're filling up the leads deck by that point, or it turns out to be cards that I've already crossed off my list. So I'm wondering if it might be better to hit up that side earlier and take advantage of that ability earlier in the scenario.
Well, I think that's similar to the strategy that I mentioned earlier, and goodness, whoever it was in chat, Davy, I think, where that is way more effective in the beginning when one card is probably a lot of information compared to the amount of information you have at that moment. Whereas like late in the game, when you're trying to like narrow down stuff, like you've probably seen 60% of the leads deck, 70% of it, and so that top card probably isn't worth it.
I think I've hit upon some new strategy. This has been useful for me. Maybe it won't be useful for a single one of our listeners, but it's useful for me, so that's what matters.
So chat is pointing out how there are no treacheries that give you a choice of shuffling, or that shuffle cards into the leads deck, and they're right. I really quickly went through and checked treacheries. What I'm thinking of are locations like the house on Water Street, where it's like when you succeed investigating it, you can either draw the top card of the encounter deck or shuffle it into Leeds deck, and I always just draw it. Like, I'm like, no, I'll take it. I will take it. I'm not gonna put it in the Leeds deck. Don't want that.
Yeah, there's
the jail and the bookshop.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
The
And
other
the
very
bookshop.
interesting location is the Esoteric Order of Dagon, which is after the last clue is discovered from it, you remove the top card of the Leeds deck from the game without looking at it.
Yeah. Oh.
So that's a really interesting decision to make, because you're actually potentially removing something from the deck that you'll never be able to access and cross off your list.
But you don't know that you won't be able to get it off your list.
you don't know if it's one you've already crossed off or if it's it's just
So how have you guys like dealt with that particular effect?
I deal with it last.
Yeah.
Same.
When I'm pretty sure, I think. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one to deal with.
Yeah.
I think it sucks to deal with, and I think you just essentially no blanket, just tank it. Like you just have to accept that it's going to happen, and you try to play around it.
I think I've just left. Because again, I've only played it twice. I think I've just left the clues on the location, and I'm like, nope, that's fine. Don't need them.
Yeah,
They can sit there.
yeah, you can totally do that.
Yeah, so that whole interplay with the Leeds deck is cool. I like the locations in this one. I think we hit upon the main elements of strategy here. So what happens is there's a kind of mid-scenario interlude, like we've seen in a few other scenarios, where you have to make the accusation. And you can choose when this happens, but obviously you need to do it before time runs out on the agenda. But there's something about the nature of like framing it as making the accusation in the interlude that makes it feel always really high stakes a lot of the times, especially the first time I played this scenario, like, oh no. But yeah, this is where you have to choose who you think the hideout is and who the suspect is, and then you have to reveal. And if you get both wrong, that's it. Your scenario's done. You fail the mission. If you get both right, cool, you get to advance to the final end game of the scenario. If you get one wrong and one right, cool, you still get to keep going, but you get an added complication with this Innsmouth mob that pops out on the table.
And they are a beefy mob.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're probably not going to defeat them.
Nope.
Pro tip.
I mean, maybe, but... I think only if you expect it. You know what I mean? Like, only if you... I don't think you're beating them on your blind playthrough.
It would be fun to try to, like, speaking of playing this standalone, to try to figure out whether you can take them out. To tech for it. Now, in terms of making the accusation, I mean, it's pretty much... There's not really necessarily any strategy for it. You just do the best you can with what information you have. Are there any particular suspects who you always choose, who you think are more suspicious than the others? Or is it just random to you?
It's random to me. Yeah.
I mean, my first time playing, I got Othira Gilman. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, she doesn't look that, But then the second time I got Barnabas Marsh, and I was like, oh yeah, there's a shady fellow. Like,
yeah, he's the guy.
He makes
That's him.
sense. Yeah. Is he the Johnny Goblin Fingers of this scenario?
Yeah.
Barnabas Marsh.
Yeah. For those who aren't in the know, the common joke in Lord of the Rings was it's always Johnny Goblin Fingers, because for some reason it always is. But yeah, I think I always pick Barnabas Marsh if he's one of the potential ones as well. It's just that last name, so...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It can't possibly be Joyce Little. I mean, she owns the bookshop. And look at her.
So the end game is pretty much you just need to... You find out, obviously, where Elina is. She's at, spoiler alert, she's at the hideout. And you just have to get the clues off that location in order to rescue her. And the kidnapper is at that location to stop you. So at that point, it's pretty much just straight ahead Arkham at that point, right? There's not really any tricky strategy there.
Push to the finish kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get clues off. That's a good thing.
Yep.
So, in terms of Vanishing of Elena Harper and the resolutions, there's a lot of resolutions, but it's not because there's any complicated decisions to make or crazy combinations. It's just because each suspect has their own special resolution, which kind of details like the interrogation that you and Elina give to the suspect once you get a hold of them. Which is fun. I actually had a lot of fun recording these for Dissonant Voices because I tried to think about, how would this person talk? It was it was a little bit of a Dungeon Master moment of trying to figure out different ways of them talking. But yeah, even though mechanically they're all the same, so either you fail this investigation, which means the mission fails and you don't get Elena Harper, or the mission is successful, you're able to rescue her, and then you get one of these resolutions, which the result is the same. The mission is successful, which means during the final interlude, the syzygy, then you get to add Elena Harper to your deck. Or an investigator gets to add her. Which, Elena Harper... Let's take a look at Elena Harper because...
Oh, yeah. She's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. So, looking at Elena Harper, if someone gets to her first, feel free to read her.
Oh, yeah. All over it. Elena Harper, 4-cost asset. She's neutral. She's got an intellect, intellect, agility, and wild icons. Agency, ally, and detective traded. You have +1 intellect and +1 agility, which is amazing to start. The first action you perform each turn does not provoke attacks of opportunity. That's bonkers good. And then she has 3 health, 2 horror, or 2 sanity, and she takes up the ally slot. Whew, she is a good ally for everybody.
I mean, boosting intellect and agility right there, you're like, okay, sign me up. Any allies that boost 2 stats are generally pretty good, but then ignoring an attack of opportunity on your first action, there's a lot of uses for that. Trish especially loves Elena Harper, it turns out.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Ursula would also like that. Also boosting the big skills.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. I like Elena as a card, and as a character, I like everything about Elena Harper, so... Yeah.
4 is a big cost. Like, that's not nothing. I think 3 would be too much of a steal of a deal.
Oh, totally.
4's fair,
I
guess. Ugh. Fine.
Yeah, so if you can get Elena, definitely worth it. Maybe we'll be fighting over her during Iron Man. We'll see.
Yeah.
I think there's usually one investigator who probably will clearly most benefit from that.
Yes.
Yeah. And be able to afford her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the Innsmouth scenarios. The final question, because we've gotten a lot of big boxes now. What number is this? Because I've lost track.
Like 30.
5? 5 or 6?
5 or 6, yeah. It's one of those two. I'm sure someone in chat will tell us.
I think it's 6.
So we've had a lot to compare it to now. How does Innsmouth Conspiracy box rack up to you? How does it compare to the other big boxes we got as a total package? Player cards, scenarios.
I am super happy with it. I think the Bless and Curse tokens and that whole play is amazing. I absolutely love it, especially as it's getting fleshed out further into the cycle. The scenarios, I mean, Pit of Despair is rough. Like, I'm not beating around the bush there. It's tough, but I'm okay with its toughness because it slaps you around, but we're used to that. And then the Disappearance of Elena Harper, that is like a fantastic scenario. So one that I want to play over and over again. It sucks that there's only one in that scenario or in the campaign. So
yeah, it's a really solid box. I really like this one. Gosh, I don't know. It's so hard for me to compare it to like other boxes because when a box comes out, I'm usually like, oh, best one right here. I think TFA was the only one. I think TFA was the only one where I was like, no, I wish it was different. You know what I mean? And that was obviously we all came around. I especially came around on TFA. I really enjoy it. But gosh, I don't know. I will say that I feel sorry for people who are going to be collecting the Innsmouth cycle late, like getting into this cycle later when we've moved on from it, and the packs are hard to get a hold of because it's going to be difficult to feel like the player cards are worth everything when you're not able to easily get the whole suite of Bless and Curse. You know what I mean? Like, imagine only getting the box and the first pack, and then the rest of them just aren't available because that's how these tend to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Because, I mean, that's how I feel now with all the packs not being out.
Yeah.
But I keep having the same thought of, I want to build this deck. Oh, but I know this card is coming out later that'll be really good for us. I'll wait. Oh, I want to build this deck. Same thing, so.
Mm-hmm. But otherwise, I mean, yeah, I really love it. The scenarios are great. The campaign's great. Jesse in chat, Black Horror, says that Dream Eaters was hard to beat, and I do agree with that. I loved the Dream Eaters box. I thought that both of those scenarios were amazing, and I love the player cards and the investigators that we got from it. But this is up there too.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where to rate it because I feel somewhat similarly to you, Nick, where it's almost like the Cult of the New, like whatever box came out latest is my favorite big box. And I think ultimately where it ranks, I can only like look back on later with the whole picture of the campaign being out. But it's definitely a campaign where every time I start up a new kind of run with new investigators through Innsmouth, I'm not like, oh man, I gotta play through these scenarios. Like, I'm usually pretty excited to get a go through them, and I've even by now kind of gotten the hang and have fun with Pit of Despair, and Elena Harper is a great scenario. So yeah, and we get new tokens like we talked about, so it's a good package for sure.
It's a lot to love.
Yep. I'm really interested to see how the whole campaign plays out with this whole faction narrative eventually. All right, I think that completes the Innsmouth Conspiracy box.
We're finally caught up. Just kidding, we're not caught up at all. I blame MJ for the absolute dearth of Arkham content. My God, we've had so much. Mm-hmm. I'm glad we're able to finally talk about Innsmouth, that we've cleared everything else out on the docket.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, right. Well, why don't we move on into Tentacle time? Ian, why don't you go first?
Whew. There's a lot of stuff, so I'll try to pare it down. So I'm still playing Dragon Age Inquisition. I won't talk much about it because I talked about it last time, but still going strong. This has been the run where I'm finally going to beat the game because I'm getting close to completing it. Put way too many hours in it. Other stuff, though. So a couple things. One is I'm reading through the book series, The Expanse, which I think there's 8 or 9 books in the series by now. The authors of the book series are like the anti-George R.R. Martin because they actually pump out books really fast.
Do they also get to the point?
Even though I think they run in the same circles as George R.R. Martin, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, so I've tried reading the first book of The Expanse like 4 times, and I kept falling off, not because it's not good, but I know as busy adults, we've all run into this with video games or books where you start it and then something happens to distract you, and then it's been like weeks or months since you last read it, and you're like, I can't pick up where I left off. I don't remember what happened. I'm going to start it over. So I did that same thing with Expanse book 1 like 4 times, and then finally I finished it, and then I blew through book 2, and I'm blowing through book 3. So I think I'm just going to ride that train all the way, but really enjoying the Expanse book series. It's more of like hard sci-fi, of like it's kind of contained within the solar system. It's not like far off, like we've colonized like 1,000 star systems. It's like within the solar system, and there's a lot of focus on like, you know, when you suddenly accelerate to all this thrust in space, it turns out human bodies are kind of squishy, so they have like these drugs that get injected in them to to get them through high G maneuvers, and they have to worry about stopping and decelerating. But it's a cool mix of genres, because I feel like Expanse is like a mix of noir and space opera and sci-fi horror. Like it has all those, and like kind of political stuff. So it's like a mix of all those things, which is really good. So highly recommended. And then the other thing, which is more recent, is The Captain is Dead, which is originally a board game, but they recently turned it into a video game version, and it's on iOS, on mobile, it's on Steam computer. So just recently downloaded it, and it's basically, it riffs heavily on Star Trek, but it's basically like your ship has been attacked by aliens, your captain is dead, you got to control 4 different crew members and repair different systems as they keep damaging you. So you have a certain amount of actions per crew member, and bad stuff keeps happening, and the end goal is you have to repair your kind of jump core drive so you can jump away from the enemy before they blow you up. But it's a really cool game. I haven't played the board game yet. It's been on my list for a long time, but at least the video game implementation is really fun and highly recommended as well.
Is it turn-based, Ian?
Yep, turn-based. Which is good for me, because I kind of hate real-time stuff like that, in terms of, like, if it was like, hurry up and move your people around and fix the stations while the enemy is blowing you up, I legit would not play the game. It'd be too stressful for me. That's just how I am. But turn-based, where you can kind of plan out each action and moves and kind of respond to what's going to come up, that's why I really enjoy the game.
I just looked it up on my phone. Looks interesting. I might have to push that purchase button.
I think you might have to.
The amount of times that you guys have recommended apps, and like while you're recommending them, I'm looking them up on my phone, and like by the end of the episode, I've bought it and downloaded it, and I'm like already playing it. Terrible. Nick, do you have an app to recommend?
Well, 2 of Ian's things that he brought up reminded me of things that I loved that I was like, oh, maybe you guys would like this. So, well, not 2, I guess, because Ian, you said The Expanse. I'm actually listening to audiobooks of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series, because I've read that first book countless times, but the follow-ups I've only read once each. So I was like, oh, I'll go through those on Audible. And now that you mentioned The Expanse, I was like, oh god, I should get that on Audible too, because I've been meaning to read that and I haven't yet. But anyway, Ian, you bring up The Captain is Dead, and that reminds me, it's a PlayStation game. I think it's only on PlayStation, but it's called Tharsis, like the last half of Catharsis. And it's a turn-based sci-fi strategy game where you play a crew that's going to Mars. And your spaceship gets hit with a micrometeor storm. And so it's all about, the goal is just to survive the trip. And it has dice, and it's turn-based, and you get different crew, like as every time you play, you unlock new stuff, so you unlock new crew members who have new abilities. It's really fun. I know, Ian, you have a PlayStation, right? You have a PS4?
Yep.
It's relatively cheap. It came out years ago. I bought it, and I played probably 2-3 dozen times. And I really enjoyed it. But you talking about Captain is Dead, I was like, oh yeah, Tharsis. I should introduce you to Tharsis, because that was a fun little, like, it takes like 10 minutes to play a round of it,
I'm looking it up right now. It's on Steam too. Oh, it does.
Oh, it is on Steam. Yes, it's a dice.
Speaking my language.
It's so good. And not only that, but you can cannibalize your crew members.
Oh. I shouldn't have had so much joy in my voice, but
because food and supplies are a big thing, and that's one thing you can do. It like drains your sanity, but you can eat a dead crew member to stay alive. Anyway, it's a really fun game, and like I said,
like Scott, this tentacle time has cost me money.
It's really good. It's really good. And Scott, if you got Captain is Dead, you should check out Tharsis. It's only one, like it's only solo. You can't play multiplayer.
I already have it. I have it pulled up on Steam now.
Perfect. It's so good. It's such a fun, simple game. So
Is it on iOS by chance?
I don't know if it's on mobile, actually.
See, the thing is, I don't have a lot of time for computer gaming.
Sure.
But I have a lot of time for mobile gaming.
It would be perfect for mobile. I would be surprised if there isn't a mobile version, but I guess I don't know.
It's not on mobile.
Yeah, and I was going to talk about, obviously, Rime of the Frost Maiden. I'm not going to get into it, but every Tuesday night, 7 p.m. to 11 p.m., twitch.tv/Nicholas Corey. Come watch us play D&D. It's super fun. But the one thing that I was going to talk about was Lovecraft Country. I'm finally watching it. Wow, is that show a wild ride?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
sure is.
My wife and I watched the first episode, and then we watched the second episode, and that second episode encompassed everything that I thought was going to take the whole season to explore. But they wrapped it up at the end of episode 2, and I was like, well, where do we go from here? But it turns out to some pretty cool and interesting places. It's I guess it's like an anthology. It's like a series of short stories with the same characters. And there's kind of like an arc to it, but it's definitely more about the individual stories. It's really good. Really well done. I'm really enjoying it.
How far are you in the season?
We just finished episode 5, I want to say, 5 or 6. So we just finished. I don't want to spoil anything in case there's anybody, like, I know I'm late to the party, but I don't want to spoil it for anybody else. But we just finished the episode where Ruby, Letitia's sister, undergoes some transformative effects.
Yeah.
That was what we just finished. And that, holy cow, is that episode. Oof, that's hard to watch for a few different reasons. But it was really good.
Yeah, I know some people enjoyed the show more than others, let's say, even in our own Discord. But I enjoyed the show a lot. Like, I really liked it. And I think part of it was what you're talking about. Not all of it, but part of it is what you're talking about, that it's definitely an anthology, and each episode kind of plays with a different genre. So it's not necessarily as cohesive or focused on an arc as a lot of shows are these days.
Right.
But
that was difficult for me to, like, honestly, after episode 2 was probably the coolest I've ever been. Like, cool as in, like, not excited. Like, I almost didn't keep watching because I was just like, it was so different than what I expected. Like, again, I expected that episode 2 to be stretched out across the whole season. So I was just like, I don't know if this is... And then episode 3 started, and it was so different that I was just like, this isn't doing what I want. But once I was able to get over myself and enjoy the stories that were being told, then I was like, oh yeah, this is great. I love it. It's the characters are amazing. The writing is pretty good. Like, it has some moments, but overall it's pretty good. I enjoy it.
Yeah. There's one episode in the season that you haven't gotten to yet, which was the one that, like, creeped me out the most, like, legit, like, chills.
Cool.
If you get to that one, I'm sure it'll be the same one. You can message me.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to finishing that season because, yeah, it's just been great. Scott.
All right, so I found it on Amazon. Now I'm downloading this season and
Found it on.
how much does it cost to get the DVD set? Oh, this is an expensive technical time. Luckily for me, well, I mean, we're still kind of unpacking because moving a house is a lot of things. We are down to, like, no joke, under 10 boxes to unpack.
Oh, nice.
So
You're
excited
further
about
than
that.
we are, and we've been...
Yeah, that's better than us, for sure.
We made a concerted effort. We're like, every single day, we are unpacking at least one box. That's the thing. That's the rule. You have to unpack one box a day minimum.
Yeah.
And
the thing is, if you
just
get
been going
stuck in
hard.
that mode where, like, you stop doing that, it's really easy to get stuck in, like, oh, the boxes are just gonna stay there.
Yeah.
See, and I approach it differently where I'm like, I don't do, I'm going to unpack one box a day. I do it where I'm going to get one room ready a day. So I do more in a day, but then once I feel like the room is ready, then I'm like, okay, everything else I'll get to when I get to it. So literally in my office, I have a stack of, like, 10 boxes that have different board games and card games and shit in them that I just haven't gotten to yet, because it's all the stuff that I don't play, and I'm like, it has to find a home eventually.
Throw them out.
Oh god. Jeez.
Well, something to consider. Other than that, honestly, I've just been keeping busy with chess, because that's easy to play on my phone, and still Slay the Spire. That game just, man, that game has its hooks in me. I will never not play Slay the Spire. So, yeah, it's the only roguelike I think that I've really taken to, and I wonder if I'm at 100 hours yet.
Oh, wow.
A lot of time. A lot of time. So, it's oh, God, it's so good. And I have it on my phone. I was talking about, I have all this mobile time, and, you can just, leave and come back to it because it's turn-based. And that's what...
Yes.
Ian, when you said the captain is dead, it's oh, is it turn-based? Can I just, leave it there for a couple hours and come back? Oh, really?
That's the key.
So... Yeah.
I did re-download Slay the Spire recently too, but I haven't had a chance to play it much. I'm still on my first run.
Oh, such a good game. Anyways, that's it for me. All right, well, I think we can call episode 99, or the Gretzky episode, a rousing success. Guys, thanks for having us tonight in your ear holes. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back next time with episode 100.
Whoa!
Have a good night, guys. Thanks for listening to Mythos Busters. Good night.
Bye.